Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran, and just after 9 p.m. in New Delhi, 6:30 in the evening in Moscow and 11:30 in the morning in Washington DC, and you're watching Newsnight on DD India, your prime-time destination for news and analysis. It's good to see you again. Right, on the show tonight, we bring you the latest on the political developments in Pakistan. Also on the show, we retain a sharp focus on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, plus news and updates from India and the world. All that and much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. Imran Khan has his back to the wall as the opposition seeks his ouster from power. Pakistani lawmakers gather in parliament for trust vote. But Khan's party moves Supreme Court, files review petition, seeks cancellation of assembly session. Imran Khan calls cabinet meeting. Ministry of Home Affairs declares Hafiz Talha Saeed, son of Pakistani terrorist Hafiz Muhammad Saeed, as a designated terrorist under the provisions of the UAPA Act. It's day 45 of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelinsky in Kyiv. The governor of the eastern region of Luhansk urges people to flee immediately as Russia increases its shelling in the area. Ukrainian officials say 10 humanitarian corridors agreed upon to evacuate people from regions besieged by Russian forces. In Sri Lanka, anticipating protest, authorities close Colombo's golf-faced Green Park. Opposition to move a no-confidence motion against the government. Indian vaccine manufacturers reduce the cost of a precautionary dose. Covishield and Covaxin to cost 225 rupees in private hospitals. No fresh registration required, but all vaccinations must be recorded on the Covin platform. As COVID cases continue to rise in China, the country has been building makeshift hospitals to tackle new infections. Shanghai is currently under a citywide lockdown as authorities work to contain the city's biggest ever COVID-19 outbreak. A heat wave sweeps northern India. Delhi records 41.6 degrees Celsius. It's the highest temperature recorded in the first 15 days of April in the last 72 years. Red alert in Rajasthan as Alwar records 45.8 degrees. In sports, in the Thailand Open, Govind, Anand and Sumit strike gold as the Indian boxers end campaign with 10 medals. And history for India is the Squash World Doubles Championships. India backs 2 gold medals at the World Doubles Championships. All right, then let me now dive straight into our cover story. Now, Pakistan is in a political crisis. It's been on the boil for days now, but things have come to a head and it has left incumbent Prime Minister Imran Khan with few honorable options. The writing is on the wall. The numbers are clearly stacked against him. So unless he chooses to again brazen it out, his days in office are numbered.
It was an action-packed Saturday indeed for deciding the political fate of Imran Khan. The ruling side the entire day was engaged in bringing home the point that the no-trust motion brought by the opposition will not be able to come to the point of voting. But the opposition had come all prepared and it vociferously demanded from the Speaker that voting be held and it sometimes even threatened with the challenge of legal action. In this game, sometimes the opposition and sometimes the ruling side had the advantage. Proceedings started around 10:30 AM local time according to the directions of the Pakistan Supreme Court. What is quite interesting is the fact that Imran Khan himself was not present in the house to witness the writing of his political future. The opposition, which had suffered a blow the last time, is in no mood to let go. That's why leader of opposition Shahbaz Sharif stood up and gave a necessary challenge to Speaker Asad Kaisar. Shahbaz Sharif had brought with him the decision of the Supreme Court. He read out the relevant para and challenged the Speaker that he should not even think of disobeying the judicial verdict and invite contempt of court.
That is the intent of this order. मैं गुजारिश करना चाहता हूं कि आज जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जो हुक्म है, जो ऑर्डर है, आप आज उसके ताबे आप हाउस की कार्रवाई चलाएंगे, इसलिए कि आज ये पार्लियामान एक नई तारीख रकम करने जा रहा है। आज ये पार्लियामान आईनी और कानूनी तरीके से एक सिलेक्टेड वज़ीर-ए-आज़म को शिकस्त फाश देने जा रहा है।
The Speaker assured the opposition that he will obey the directives of the Supreme Court. He reiterated that he will follow the judicial verdict in letter and spirit. Saying this, he said one thing that even shocked the opposition. The Speaker talked about discussing an alleged foreign hand issue behind the no trust motion. Hearing this, the opposition was rattled.
जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का फैसला मैंने पढ़ा है
जी,
मैं मनो अन उसके मुताबिक अपना जो कार्रवाई करूंगा
मैं
सुप्रीम कोर्ट की
जी बिल्कुल सही।
और इसमें जो अहम बात ये भी है कि जो एक इंटरनेशनल कंस्पिरेसी के हवाले से एक बात उठी है, उसके हवाले से भी हम चाहते हैं कि आज इसके ऊपर बात हो।
ये सब बावकार लोग और खुददार लोग हैं। अगर आप कॉन्स्पिरेसी की बात करेंगे तो बात बहुत दूर तक चली जाएगी। इनको सबको हम नंगा करेंगे, इस हमाम में नंगा करेंगे इनको।
बाबर अवान साहब।
On the other hand, on behalf of Imran's government, senior leader of PTI and Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi took on the mantle. He once again reiterated the allegation that a foreign hand was there behind the no trust motion. Qureshi also raised questions on the decision of the court. He alleged that one foreign diplomat had threatened the Pakistani representative that Pakistan will have to face punishment if Imran Khan continues in power.
तारीख गवाह होगी, तारीख हकायक कभी छुपते नहीं हैं, दबाए जा सकते हैं, पर्दे में रखे जा सकते हैं, छुपाए जा सकते हैं, लेकिन एक वक्त आएगा जनाब चेयरमैन कि तारीख उनको बेनकाब करेगी। तारीख उन लोगों को जिन लोगों ने ये सारा नाटक रचाया है उनको बेनकाब करेगी, याद रखिए।
When there were heated exchanges between both sides, the Speaker adjourned the House till 12:30 p.m.
12:30 बजे जो है ना तक इजलास एडजर्न करता हूँ।
After that, talks continued between opposition and ruling side, but stalemate continued and did not allow resumption of proceedings. The opposition wanted to have voting as soon as possible, while the ruling side was extending the tenure of the government by debating the matter. Finally, after an interval of over 3 hours, proceedings once again resumed. On behalf of the PTI, Shah Mahmood Qureshi took a dig at the opposition. His speech ended and PPP leader Bilawal Bhutto took on the mantle on behalf of the opposition and demanded immediate voting on the no trust motion.
बिलावल भुट्टो साहब,
आपसे मुतालबा करता हूं
कोर्ट का एहतराम हम पे लाजिम है, लेकिन कोर्ट पार्लियामेंट के डोमेन में इंटरवीन नहीं कर सकता और पार्लियामेंट कोर्ट
माजी में
डोमेन में इंटरवीन नहीं कर सकता। एजेंडा जो है वो बेसिकली स्पीकर का और नेशनल असेंबली का गवर्नमेंट का होता है, लेकिन हमने ट्रू स्पिरिट के साथ इसको माना है।
ये फैसला किया, आपको पाबंद किया और आप तौहीन अदालत करते हुए खुद भी नाअहल होंगे।
On the other hand, in the last minute, the ruling PTI filed a review petition against the verdict of the Supreme Court. The petition seeks a review of the ruling given by the 5-member bench headed by Chief Justice Umar Atta Bandial. The petition states that the court should give the order to set aside the session of Parliament. Bureau Report, DD India.
Alright then, time now for our In Focus segment in which we are discussing about Imran Khan runs out of options. Imran Khan runs out of options. And joining me are two guests, Ambassador Dileep Sinha and Captain Alok Bansal. Ambassador Sinha is a former permanent representative of India to the United Nations in Geneva and Ambassador to Greece. He also headed the Pakistan desk at the Indian Foreign Ministry, and he is the author of a book titled Legitimacy of Power, the Permanence of Five in the Security Council. And Captain Bansal has served in the Indian Navy. Today he is the director of India Foundation, a privately held public policy think tank headquartered in New Delhi. Ambassador Sinha, Captain Bansal, welcome to Newsnight. Good to see you. Ambassador, if I can start with you, I'm wondering tonight as I'm talking to you, what is Imran Khan really up to? Is he defying the army and now the court as well?
Quite clearly so. He clearly does not have the support of the army in this. The army is staying out of this whole process, possibly waiting for the political parties to play out this charade that they usually go through when they run into a crisis like this. But the court order is a little more serious than this, because the court order was very clear, very categorical. And in any case, in the constitutional process, today is the 7th day of the start of the discussion of the tabling of the motion. And therefore, the vote should take place by tonight, as per the constitution. So if the vote does not take place by midnight, that will be not only a violation of the order of the Supreme Court, it will also be a violation of the constitution. There are very specific, two very specific provisions in the Pakistani constitution on how a no-confidence motion is to be treated in the National Assembly. So yes, Imran Khan, by prevaricating, by trying to filibuster, and by trying to misuse the two presiding officials of the National Assembly, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, both of whom face a vote of no confidence, a motion of no confidence tabled by the opposition. He is playing with the constitution, and he's also playing with the entire democratic system of Pakistan, feeble as it is, but at least he could have given it a chance. But the whole process is becoming extremely murky and very serious.
Captain Bansal, Imran Khan claims to be a cricketer of some repute. He won the World Cup for Pakistan in 1992, fair enough. But for someone who said repeatedly that I will play till the last ball is bowled, for that person not to show the minimum courtesy of presenting himself on the floor of the House surely is unsportsmanlike conduct and behavior. And now we're hearing all sorts of speculation doing the rounds in Pakistani media. For instance, one channel is saying that Imran Khan is in the midst of striking a deal with the powers that be to allow him safe passage out of the country, presumably, to ensure that there is no cases brought against him or he's arrested. What is Imran Khan really playing for? His options are few and few by the hour. I mean, either resign and call elections or hold a trust vote and face a inevitable defeat.
He is willing to call the elections, but I think that is his best bet, and that's what he had tried to do. But at the moment, opposition doesn't want elections, the establishment doesn't want elections, because Imran Khan, by spinning this charade of this foreign conspiracy, has managed to sway the voters. There is no doubt that at this point of time, there is a groundswell of support for Imran Khan, and that he realizes. And that's one of the reasons why he had tried to call the elections at a time when opposition is not willing. For last few years, opposition has been asking for elections. But now they don't want elections, because in Pakistan, because of this foreign conspiracy theory, there is a groundswell of support, and this was very clearly evident in the second round of local body polls that happened in KPK. There was a huge change between the first round, where PTI was squarely defeated, to second round, where it emerged as the single largest party. So they know that they are winning, and Imran Khan's whole game plan is to delay the process as much as is possible. Maybe by midnight tonight they will have a vote, but he wants to utilize this opportunity that till midnight he will do everything to win more and more support amongst the masses. His people will make statements in the parliament accusing of foreign conspiracy, corruption and things like that. He He addressed the nation yesterday, he addressed the nation day before, he may probably address the nation today again when he resigns or when he loses or something like that. So this process will continue. He is trying to gain as much as is feasible from the support, and he is hoping that this government which follows him in any case will not be in a position to govern for too long, because this comprises of disparate elements which have come together with the single point agenda of toppling Imran Khan. Now, parties like PPP and PMLN, who have always been a daggers drawn, there are parties like PPP and MQM who have a clash of interest within Sindh. You have leftist parties like ANP, MQM, and then you have the rightist parties like JUIF. They've all come together with the single point agenda of toppling Imran Khan. Now, once he's toppled, what next? So that is where the problem is. I think Imran Khan knows that the opposition, even after it takes over, will not last long. And that's why he's trying to delay the process as much as he can, so that he can continue to build on the people's movement. And I think after his government is toppled, he will continue the movement for toppling of this government, so that the groundswell of support which has been generated does not diminish till the elections are finally announced.
Indeed. Ambassador, I want to build on the argument put forth by Captain Bansal that there are disparate political parties in the so-called Pakistan Democratic Movement. There are contradictions galore, but they're united for a cause, for a purpose here. That's well understood. But is it certain that, is it given that Shahbaz Sharif is the natural contender to succeed Imran Khan, number one? Number two, how would you describe Imran Khan's legacy? He's still the incumbent Prime Minister, no doubt. But how would you describe his legacy? Because he rode to victory on the twin election planks or campaign slogans of Naya Pakistan, meaning New Pakistan, and Tabdeeli, meaning change. But the economy is tanking. You know, he's literally going with a begging bowl before the IMF and other agencies. His anti-corruption plank is also going nowhere. So how would you describe his legacy, number one? And number two, about the opposition, is Shahbaz Sharif a natural contender to succeed if they win the trust vote?
Well, at the moment, the PPP is reconciled to and in fact has stated that it will support Shahbaz Sharif being becoming the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And there was in fact an interview where Bilawal said that he had gone with his father to meet Shahbaz Sharif, and that is how the alliance was built up. Now, of course, this is a very disparate group, and how long it lasts is anybody's guess. But the fact is that Imran Khan has managed to unite the opposition against himself, and he's also managed to lose the support of his own allies.
That's right.
And 22 of his own party members. So that is as far as Imran Khan's leadership qualities are concerned. As far as his legacy is concerned, you remember when he came to power, he had accused the previous government of having gone to the IMF and mortgaged Pakistan's sovereignty to the IMF, and he had said that he would not go to the IMF. He would instead go to foreign countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE and China for money. All these countries have now given up on Pakistan, including China, because China has pumped in about $40 billion in the CPEC project, which is getting nowhere. And there are clear indications that China is no longer interested in funding Pakistan more, especially after that accident where the terrorist attack on Pakistani engineers engaged in projects in Pakistan. So Imran Khan has been forced to go back to the IMF. In addition, Imran Khan has succeeded in putting Pakistan under FATF sanctions, that is the Financial Action Task Force sanctions, because of its support for terror finance. And Pakistan has remained under FATF sanctions for the last 4 years. So, and Imran Khan has not been able to get that lifted from Pakistan. So Pakistan's economic condition is very difficult. And of course, the current Ukraine crisis, all that adds to the economic problems that Pakistan faces today. So overall, if Imran Khan leaves today or tomorrow, then his legacy would be very poor one, where he would leave behind not only a government that has been pulled up by the Supreme Court for violating the Constitution, but also an economy in a shambles.
Indeed. Captain Bansal, the Supreme Court order clearly called into question multiple organs of the Pakistani state, starting right at the top, the President, the Prime Minister, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and long list of organs of the state machinery. but there are many dramatis personae in the unfolding political drama, including the opposition parties, the army, the ISI, General Bajwa, the Chief of Army Staff. How do you look at the relationship that exists among these various players, army on the one hand, Imran Khan, and the opposition on the other side?
See, as far as Supreme Court judgment is concerned, it's very clear. Once Deputy Speaker dismissed the no confidence motion, Prime Minister advised the President and President followed suit. But the fact is that the Deputy Speaker's action was unconstitutional and Parliament has been reinstated. The moment Deputy Speaker's action was declared as unconstitutional and no confidence motion had to be debated, then as per Pakistan's constitution, Prime Minister cannot recommend resolution, and obviously the next course of action becomes unviable, loses its sanctity. As far as the equation is concerned, there is no doubt that Imran Khan's going is because of strained relations between him and General Bajwa, the army chief. That happened post the fall of Kabul, when DGISI Faiz Ahmad Faiz became all powerful. He went to Kabul to constitute the new government with backing of Imran Khan, and Imran Khan, under some say because of his wife, decided that Faiz Ahmad Faiz should continue as the DGISI, and army chief felt that this was actually an interference into his affairs, because army's officers have to be rotated according to army's promotion policies and transfer policy, and he was transferred. And when Prime Minister put his foot down saying that it is his prerogative, there was a tense situation. And now in Pakistan, please remember, the armies can select prime ministers, but prime ministers can only select chiefs when chiefs are going. No other army officer they can appoint. They cannot select that so and so will be Corps Commander Lohar, so and so will be Corps Commander Rawalpindi, or so and so will be CGS, or so and so will be Adjutant General. That right solely belongs to army chief. So that interference was unacceptable as far as they were. And since then there have been strained relations. And Imran Khan's government was propped up by a large number of smaller parties, which are the creation of GHQ and take their cue from GHQ. So they see which way the wind is blowing. So parties like BAP, and then there are smaller parties like Jamhuri Watan Party, JWP, and even MQM to some extent, PMLQ to some extent, they all take their cue from GHQ. The moment GHQ declared that they were neutral, that indicated that yes, the opposition was free to topple Imran's government, and that's what happened. So Imran Khan at that stage came out with this brilliant idea of foreign conspiracy, and gullible public that you have in this part of the world has actually bought that concept. And now what we are going to see is that irrespective of what happens tonight, whether Imran Khan stays or does not stay, there is a long bout of turbulence that is going to happen. At a time when Pakistan needs to renegotiate with IMF for a fresh loan, they are actually suffering. Their foreign exchange reserves, though adequate for the time being, are depleting very fast. And if this continues, they are going to be in a real mess. The state institutions are already weakened, and their sanctity, their strength will further erode. And at this point of time, when Taliban in Afghanistan has created an atmosphere and provided an ideological boost to extremist elements in the region, Pakistan is going to face problems. We have already seen resurgence of TTP. ISI, Islamic State, is already active on Af-Pak border. So this all will come up further as soon as that happens, because there is bound to be turbulence in days to come. And those elements will thrive and even pose threats to other countries in the region.
Indeed. Brother Sinha, very quickly, if you don't mind, we are running out of time. So while we are waiting for more information coming out of Pakistan in terms of the political drama unfolding there, we are told that Imran Khan has convened a cabinet meeting which might have begun anytime now. But given the political crisis still persisting in Pakistan, and if this constitutional crisis does not resolve by itself, can you completely rule out the return of the army in some form or the other going forward? I mean, can you completely discount that possibility? And does the army at all want to once again come to hold the reins of power?
Well, you can never rule out the possibility of the army taking over, because the army in any case is the factor of stability in Pakistan. The democratic parties are actually a sideshow in the Pakistani political process. But at the present moment, the army may be reluctant to take over power directly because of the economic situation.
Okay.
Because whoever comes to power will have to impose the IMF conditionalities, which means raising the prices of all the social services, and that will be extremely unpopular. So the army would like a civilian face to come and take the brunt of this economic crisis, and then perhaps if they become completely unpopular or rule themselves out, only then would the army in an ultimate situation come and take over. But at the present moment, I feel that the army chief may well like to let this political drama play out a little more and see if the opposition is able to topple Imran Khan and form a government and drag this political process along for a little while longer.
Right, fair enough. On that note, may I thank both my guests, Ambassador Dileep Sinha and Captain Alok Bansal, for sharing your insights with our viewers at home and abroad. But I might come back to you once again if we have some breaking news coming from Pakistan any moment now. So do stay on if you can, Ambassador Sinha and Captain Bansal. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Right, in shifting focus, some more news we are tracking here on Newsnight tonight. Ministry of Home Affairs has issued a notification declaring Hafiz Talha Saeed, son of Hafiz Muhammad Saeed, as a designated terrorist under the provisions of the UAPA Act 1967. Hafiz Talha Saeed, the son of Hafiz Saeed and a resident of Lahore, Pakistan, is a senior leader of the Lashkar-e-Taiba or the LET. He is the head of the cleric wing of the LET. The ministry said Hafiz Talha Saeed has been actively involved in recruitment, fund collection, planning and executing attacks by LET in India and Indian interests in Afghanistan. Besides, Hafiz Talha Saeed has been actively visiting various LET centers across Pakistan and during his sermons propagating for jihad against India, Israel, the US and Indian interests in particular in other Western countries. And in more news from Pakistan, a Pakistani court has jailed Hafiz Saeed for 31 years in connection with terrorism financing, court documents have showed. Now, Saeed was found guilty of multiple breaches in 2 cases, but it was not immediately clear how much jail time the new verdict would entail given his current incarceration and the fact that his sentences run concurrently. The founder of the Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist group is already in jail, having been found guilty on multiple similar charges in 2020. Now, Saeed has been arrested and released several times over the past decade. The United States offered a reward of $10 million for information leading to his conviction. Right, in the other big story we are tracking here on Newsnight, it's day 45 of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Now, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson meets Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelinsky in Kyiv. These are the latest pictures coming from Kyiv of the Johnson-Zelinsky meeting. Meanwhile, the governor of the eastern region of Luhansk, Serhiy Gaidai, has urged people to immediately flee as Russia increases its shelling in the area. Ukrainian officials say 10 humanitarian corridors agreed upon to evacuate people from regions besieged by Russian forces.
Smoke rising, belongings of civilians on the ground. These nerve-wracking visuals are from Donetsk region, city of Kramatorsk. Ukraine has called on civilians in the eastern Luhansk region to flee from amassing Russian forces after officials said at least 52 civilians trying to evacuate by rail from a neighboring region were killed in a missile attack the previous day, which included 5 children. Air raid sirens sounded in cities across eastern Ukraine, which has become the focus of Russian military action in recent weeks following a withdrawal from areas close to Kyiv. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelinsky has called for a firm global response to Friday's missile attack on a train station crowded with women, children and the elderly. Condemning the attack, US President Joe Biden accused Russia, calling it a horrific atrocity. The White House said that the Biden administration will support investigations of the train attack.
This is yet another horrific atrocity committed by Russia, striking civilians who are trying to evacuate and reach safety. Where we are now is we're going to support efforts to investigate this attack as we document Russia's actions, hold them accountable, and we will continue to surge security assistance and weapons deliveries to help Ukraine defend their country.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres also condemned the rocket attack on a railway station in Kramatorsk.
They are a gross violation of international humanitarian law and international human rights law, for which the perpetrators must be held accountable.
Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry accused Kyiv of carrying out the attack, saying it wanted to use fleeing residents as a human shield to defend the positions of Ukraine's armed forces.
According to data, one of the battalions of 19th Rocket Brigade, armed with Tochka-U missiles at the moment of attack, was in Dobropoliel, which is 45 kilometers to the southwest of Kramatorsk. This territory is under the total control of the Ukrainian military forces in Donbass.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen led top EU diplomats in a face-to-face meeting with Ukraine's President Zelinsky in Kyiv. He urged European Union to impose stricter actions on Russia for launching an offensive against Ukraine.
I am personally grateful for the fifth package of sanctions, but I believe that it is not enough. The Russians took away a lot from us. They took territories and people, and there will be a huge and fair responsibility for it. I am confident of that. That's why I am asking for help in form of sanctions. They must be toughened. Otherwise, Russia does not want to listen to anything or anybody.
Also, European Commission President pledged to President Zelinsky a speedier start to Ukraine's bid to become a member of the European Union.
It is a war, yes, that Russia unleashed against an innocent Ukraine, but it's much, much more than that. On top, it is these big questions that will be decided in this war. So your fight is also our fight. And I'm here in Kyiv with you today to send a very strong message that the European Union is by your side. We stand by your side.
Von der Leyen's trip to Kyiv was aimed at offering Zelensky moral and some financial support. Traveling by train from Brussels to Kyiv, she said that the most important message she was bringing was that there will be the EU path for Ukraine. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Now, besides the human cost of war, the Ukraine-Russia conflict is also taking a toll of the economies of these two countries. The US and its European allies are ramping up sanctions against Russia. Russia accuses the West of unleashing an economic war against it. But Russia also claims that it has the means to meet its financial commitments despite the sanctions. All that and more in the next report.
The war in Ukraine is being fought on two fronts, the military and economic fronts. The European Union this week approved new sanctions against Russia, including a ban on coal imports from August. The German economy, which has many vital linkages with the Russian economy, is intensifying efforts to reduce its exposure to Russian energy imports. Chancellor Scholz believes Putin knows the impact that sanctions will have on the Russian economy.
He knows the sanction regime is working, and this is also on financial sanctions against the central bank, for instance. The outcome of this is that he is not able to use the money, but he is not able to get to all these resources for financing his war. And this is why our sanction on certain banks and also on the central bank are so successful and so necessary, to be very clear.
Russia, however, believes that the continued supply of weapons by NATO to Ukraine and the imposition of sanctions on Russia do not help the peace initiative. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russia has means to meet its financial commitments despite the sanctions, calling the technical possibility of a default artificially created.
Russia has all necessary resources to service its debts, and you know that significant amount of our financial reserves is blocked in foreign countries. And if this blockade will continue and these transactions to service debts would be also blocked, it can be paid in rubles. If it will be impossible, theoretically the debt's default situation is possible, but it clearly just artificial default situation. There are no grounds for a real default.
While continuing its support of Ukraine, the EU is also willing to hasten Ukraine's entry into the EU. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is convinced the Russian economy is on the path to decay.
Member states have already frozen 225 billion euros of private Russian assets in the European Union since the beginning of the war. So, if you look at that, Russia will descend in economic, financial and technological decay, while Ukraine is marching towards a European future. This is what I see. We stand with you as you defend your country, and this is my second point. Indeed, Ukrainian people are holding up the torch of freedom.
Russian oil accounts for 25% of German imports, down from 35% before the invasion, and gas imports have been cut to 40% from 55%. Russian hard coal imports were down to 25% from 50% before the invasion. The stoppage of Russian gas imports is tougher for Germany, which in the first quarter received 40% of deliveries from Russia. Germany wants to cut the share of Russian gas to 24% this summer, but it could take until the summer of 2024 for Europe's largest economy to end its reliance on Russian gas. The United States believes that US capital is what drives global growth, and that denying Russia this money will cripple its economy.
And what we've done with our ban is that we have increased the separation of Russia's economy from the global economy by saying that America, the greatest source of capital, American citizens will not be investing in Russia going forward. And what this means is that Russia will be deprived of the capital it needs to both build up its economy, but also to invest in its war machine.
Yet several multinationals have already invested hugely into the Russian economy across sectors, from mining to automobiles, and moving out may not make much financial sense.
I don't think sanctions have been imposed against the factory. It is a European company. Does it make sense to impose sanctions on its own plant and lose money? Why?
While the world may see this as a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Russia sees it as a special operation that it says could end in the foreseeable future, since its aims were being achieved by both the Russian military and Russian peace negotiators. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Friday that Moscow regards NATO as an aggressive alliance whose activities do not contribute to security and stability. Bureau Report, DD India.
And shifting focus away from Europe to Asia now. In Sri Lanka, anticipating protests, authorities have closed Colombo's golf phase Green Park. Opposition has decided to move a no-confidence motion against the government. And earlier on Friday, students, trade unionists and Buddhist priests were among the protesters who took to the streets of the Sri Lankan capital of Colombo. Police fired tear gas and water cannons at the demonstrators who were protesting for a sixth consecutive day. Some holding signs and chanting "Gota, go home." They are calling for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign as food and fuel shortages worsen due to an economic crisis in the country. The Serum Institute of India on Saturday reduced the price of a Covishield vaccine for private hospitals from 600 rupees to 225 rupees per dose. The price cut came on the eve of allowing 18 to 60-year-olds to opt for a third dose. In a tweet, the company CEO, Adar Poonawalla, said the decision was taken after discussions with the union government. He commended the decision of the government to allow a precautionary dose to everyone above 18 years of age. Meanwhile, the co-founder and joint managing director of Bharat Biotech, Suchitra Ella, also welcomed the decision to make available precautionary dose for all adults. In a tweet, she said, after consultation with the central government, Bharat Biotech has decided to revise the price of Covaxin from 1,200 rupees to 225 rupees per dose for private hospitals. Meanwhile, health secretaries of states and union territories met on Saturday under the chairpersonship of the Secretary of Health and Family Welfare. The meeting discussed about a precautionary dose for the 18 to 59-year-old population at private health center facilities. The Secretary highlighted that the precautionary dose will be same as the vaccine that was administered for the first and second doses. No fresh registration would be required for a precautionary dose, as beneficiaries are already registered on the CoWIN platform. But all vaccinations must mandatorily be recorded on the CoWIN platform. Two options of online appointment and walk-in registration and vaccination will be available at private healthcare facilities. Meanwhile, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has exceeded 185.55 crore, that is 1.86 billion. Now, vaccination for the 12 to 14-year age group was started on 16th March 2022. So far, more than 2.16 crore adolescents, that is 21.6 million, have received the first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, active caseload in India declines to 11,365. Active cases constitute 0.03% of the country's total positive cases. Consequently, India's recovery rate stands at 98.76%. Now, 1,194 patients have recovered in the last 24 hours, and the total tally of recovered patients since the beginning of the pandemic is now over 4.25 crore, that's 42.5 million. The last 24 hours saw a total of 466,362 COVID tests being conducted. Now, India has so far conducted over 79.34 crore, that's 793 million tests. Moving on, Saudi Arabia will let up to 1 million people join the Hajj pilgrimage this year, greatly expanding the key event to participants from outside the kingdom after 2 years of tight COVID-19 restrictions. The Ministry of Hajj and Umrah said in a statement which was carried by the SPA news agency that pilgrims to Mecca this year must be under 65 years of age and fully vaccinated against the coronavirus. Participants from abroad will be allowed this year, but they must present a recent negative COVID-19 PCR test. Last year, Saudi Arabia limited the annual Hajj, one of Islam's 5 main pillars, to 60,000 domestic participants compared to the pre-pandemic 2.5 million. And as COVID-19 cases continue to pile up in China, the country is converting the National Exhibition Convention Center in Shanghai into a makeshift hospital. The country has been building makeshift hospitals to tackle the imported COVID-19 cases. Now, Shanghai is currently under a citywide lockdown as authorities work to contain the city's biggest ever COVID-19 outbreak. China has so far reported more than 163,000 cases of COVID-19, with fatalities crossing 4,600 mark. In news from India now, the 20th meeting of the National Tiger Conservation Authority was held in the Packet Tiger Reserve in Arunachal Pradesh on Saturday under the chairmanship of Union Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bhupender Yadav. For the first time in the history of the authority, the meeting took place outside New Delhi. The minister said officials should promote tiger reserves in the country, which have an immense flora and fauna, while at the same time ensuring the livelihoods of people dependent on the forests. The minister pressed on the active involvement of locals for conservation and better development of forest area and tiger reserve alike. He said a meeting should be held with all stakeholders, including forest officials, local villagers and experts. On the occasion, around 100 air guns were surrendered by the local villagers as part of the state government's commitment towards wildlife conservation. A rampant use of air gun is a problem in the northeastern states. In March 2021, Arunachal Pradesh started the air gun surrender campaign, which has so far yielded good results. So far, 2,200 air guns have been surrendered.
यहाँ की जो टाइगर रिजर्व्स है, टाइगर रिजर्व्स बहुत अच्छे तरीके से चले, उसके लिए जन भागीदारी बहुत जरूरी है। और मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि लैंड एनिमल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट तो रहते हैं, लेकिन जो मनुष्य के मन में जो कंपैशन का भाव हो सकता है, उसमें भी सबसे पहली पहल अरुणाचल में करी है कि एयरगन का इतनी बड़ी संख्या में सरेंडर करा है। हम अपने फॉरेस्ट को लोगों से अलग करके नहीं बचा सकते, लोगों के साथ मिलकर के ही बचा सकते हैं। इसलिए लोगों की लाइफ स्टाइल और लाइवलीहुड भी उतना ही महत्वपूर्ण है जितना हमारे फॉरेस्ट को भी हमें आगे बढ़ाना है। इसलिए दोनों का एक बैलेंसिंग अप्रोच लेकर के हम लोगों को चलना होगा।
The Union Minister of State for Environment and Climate Change, Ashwini Kumar Chaubey, and Arunachal Pradesh Chief Minister Pema Khandu were present on the occasion. Minister Chaubey stressed on the need for paying attention to the tiger reserve in Arunachal Pradesh.
उत्तर पूर्वी क्षेत्र हमारे लिए एक कह सकते हैं कि श्रेष्ठ है। उत्तर पूर्वी क्षेत्र में ही उच्च प्राथमिकता और इसकी जो स्थानिकता है और विविध प्रजातियां जो है उसके लिए हमें टाइगर रिजर्व जैसे दंपा, नामदफा, आपका पाके आदि के प्रबंधकीय व्यवहार पर अधिक ध्यान देने की आवश्यकता। जैव विविधता के संरक्षण की दिशा में हमारे संयुक्त प्रयासों को बढ़ाने के लिए सामुदायिक समावेशी रणनीतियों जैसे बेहतर प्रबंधन प्रथाओं को अपनाया जाना चाहिए।
And Chief Minister Khandu said his government is making all efforts to preserve wildlife in the state.
हमारे यहाँ पे जो फॉरेस्ट का जो डाइवर्सिटी है, it should be our strength। हम लोग नेचर के साथ में देख के अपना फॉरेस्ट को यहाँ के बायोडाइवर्सिटी को प्रोटेक्शन करते हुए सस्टेनेबल लिविंग लोगों को कैसे हम लोग बेनिफिट पहुँचाया जाए, इसका हम लोग भरपूर कोशिश कर रहे हैं। यहाँ पे जो रिजर्व है, जैसे दो नेशनल पार्क है हमारे पास और 13 वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज, इसके अलावा 15 टाइगर रिजर्व अरुणाचल में है। तो इस सबको लेते हुए अब लोगों को भी इसका बेनिफिट किस प्रकार से पहुंचाना है, ये फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट के साथ में मिलकर हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं।
President Ramnath Kovind inaugurated a national conference on mediation and information technology in Gujarat on Saturday. The event was organized by the High Court of Gujarat at Ekta Nagar in the Narmada district. President Kovind said that for an effective dispute resolution, an alternative dispute resolution system has been introduced in the legal system.
Do all people have equal access to justice? I wondered how access to justice can be improved for all. For effective dispute resolution that is also litigant friendly, the ADR system has been introduced in the form of legislation by insertion of section 89 in Code of Civil Procedure. ADR has many modes including arbitration, mediation, conciliation and negotiation, Lok Adalat and judicial settlement.
President Kovind said technology played a vital role in judiciary during the COVID-19 pandemic. He said technology proved to be an opportunity during the pandemic.
Unprecedented human misery during the last 2 years or so, if there was a saving grace, it was from information and communication technology. ICT proved most helpful in maintaining essential activities and in keeping the wheels of the economy moving. Like remote working, remote learning helped avoid a break in education. In a way, the crisis has proved to be an opportunity for the digital revolution. The momentum has increased for the adoption of ICT to make public service delivery more efficient. At the peak of the crisis, we too had continued various functions at the Rashtrapati Bhavan with the support of technology.
And Chief Justice N.V. Ramana said mediation was relevant even during ancient times. He said any conflict in the world can be resolved by mediation.
It is the story of mediation undertaken by Lord Krishna to prevent the war of Kurukshetra. We all know the consequences of the failed mediation. Imagine how much destruction would have been avoided, how lives could have been saved, and how the kingdoms would have prospered if Lord Krishna had succeeded. Mediation is also increasingly gaining prominence in the international commercial sphere. Along with the increased awareness campaigns to educate the people The role of courts assuming great importance in realizing the full potential of ADR. An active effort must be taken by courts to make negotiations and mediation mandatory as part of case management. But the success of any endeavor rests upon the stakeholders. Lawyers must pursue every possibility of pre-litigation settlement and advise clients to approach Lok Adalats for the greater benefit of the parties.
And speaking during the event, Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju highlighted that the Prime Minister Modi-led government has done significant work in speedy delivery of justice.
The very core of the rule of law and civilized society is the provision of equitable and timely justice, that the preamble where the soul of the Constitution lives starts and list of rights with the word justice. It shows how much importance the framers of the Constitution assign to justice delivery system to our citizens. Our government, headed by Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji, is committed to speedy justice delivery system.
Defense Minister Rajnath Singh will leave for the US later on Saturday night on a 6-day visit. In a tweet, the minister said he looks forward to attending the 4th India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue in Washington, D.C. He will also visit the US Indo-Pacific Command, the Indo-PACOM headquarters in Hawaii during the visit. The minister said the visit to the US will give him an opportunity to hold talks with the US Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken alongside External Affairs Minister Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar on ways to deepen the India-US strategic partnership. He said he is looking forward to fruitful interactions during his visit. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla has said that India is a strong supporter of democratic values and governance, and its democratic system is one of the oldest democracies in the world. He was addressing the inaugural session of a 2-day executive committee meeting of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association in Guwahati.
राष्ट्रमंडल संसदीय संघ में 9 रीजन के 53 देशों के 180 विधानमंडल के सदस्य हैं। ये सभी सदस्य सामूहिक रूप से अपनी उत्कृष्ट परंपराओं, प्रभावी नीतियों और नवाचारों को साझा करते हुए संसदीय लोकतंत्र को एक मजबूत और एक उचित प्लेटफॉर्म देते हैं ताकि हम अपने अनुभवों को, विचारों को, अच्छे नवाचारों को आपस में साझा कर लोकतांत्रिक संस्थाओं को सशक्त कर सके, मजबूत कर सके।
Now, northern India, including the national capital Delhi and adjacent areas, continue to witness a scorching heat wave. The capital recorded 41.6 degrees Celsius. Alwar in Rajasthan recorded 45.8 degrees Celsius. The Met Office has predicted some relief from heat wave only after Sunday. It said there is no chance of rain over large parts of India, particularly central and northwestern parts, in the next few days. President Emmanuel Macron of France said in his last interview before the First Front presidential vote on 10th April that the far right was playing on the fears of the people. This even as his lead over far right candidate Marine Le Pen reduced. The race on Sunday appeared to be coming down to the two finalists of the 2017 election. Macron entered the race as a clear favorite, but he appears to have lost ground in opinion polls while Le Pen trends upward. Macron, who has spent the past 5 years wooing the centre-right, suddenly changed course, telling voters he would further shield them from rising living costs and the dangers of Le Pen, whom he labelled a racist. Now, Marine Le Pen made a final push for votes ahead of an election which polls project as an increasingly tight battle against Macron. Le Pen, who is trailing very closely behind incumbent Macron, greeted people in a market in the south of France. To sports now, Indian boxers Govind Shahani, Anant Pralath Chopde and Sumit struck gold at the 2022 Thailand Open International Boxing Tournament in Phuket. On the other hand, 4 Indian boxers Monica, Amit Pangal, Varinder Singh and Ashish Kumar won silver medals after enduring defeats in the finals. While Manisha, Pooja and Bhagyabati Kachari claimed bronze medals with their semi-finals finish. The Indian contingent bettered its last edition's haul of 8 medals by clinching 10 medals, including 3 golds, 4 silvers and 3 bronzes. The Indian athletes ink a new history for India at the World Doubles Squash Championships in Glasgow. Deepika Pallikal combined with Saurav Ghoshal and Joshna Chinnappa to clinch twin gold medals for the country in mixed and women's doubles. Back in the squash court after a gap of almost 4 years, Deepika Pallikal was at her absolute best on the day, first with Ghoshal and later with Chinnappa. Up against the 4th seeds Adrian Waller and Alison Waters in the mixed doubles final, Pallikal and Ghoshal led 8-1 at some point in the first game before their opponents made a brief comeback. The English duo gave their all but fell short at 6-11, 8-11 to hand India their first ever gold medal at the World Doubles Squash Championships. Just an hour after clinching the mixed doubles world title, Pallikal was back on the court for the women's doubles finals alongside Chinnappa. They were up against Sarah Jane Perry and Alison Waters of England. And finally, British rock band Pink Floyd released a new song to raise money for humanitarian relief in Ukraine, featuring the vocals of a Ukrainian singer who quit an international tour to fight for his country and was wounded. The single, Hey Hey Rise Up, Pink Floyd's first original new music in almost 30 years, was recorded last week and highlights singing by Andrei Klivnyuk from Ukrainian band Boombox, which was taken from a social media post. Take a listen. And with that, it's a wrap. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.